Good morning, everyone. Since we couldn't do the Tactical Wisdom show over on the Tactical Wisdom channel, I decided that I would just do it myself because why not? Why not? So anyway, it is me. Had a good weekend here at Camp Ponderosa. Had a great group of students here doing the combatives class. There were a couple of bruised egos, but nothing more than that. And there is one guy who's walking a little bit funny after someone landed a kick that was not planned. Sometimes when you're doing combatives class, people get in the moment and absolutely forget what we're supposed to be doing and just fight. So you know who you are. Hope you're recovering well from the injury. It's a great class. We start out with unarmed self-defense. We do ground fighting, and then sticks, knives, cold firearms, combatives. Just a great weekend long course. And if you've taken it once, you can take it as many times as you want to after that for free. Because I want you to come and get the reps in. I want you to come and practice the moves and continue to do the techniques and continue to do whatever else you want to do, right? You get out there and learn it and actually practice it and get on it. We have more classes coming up. Next weekend, we're doing a get home class where we talk about how to build a get home bag, develop your plan, and get back home. And then that's going to be followed on Sunday of next week with a Baofeng Basics class where we teach you all the menu settings and how to set up a Baofeng radio and how to use it to actually communicate with other people. So pretty important stuff. For those of you who are fans of the show, I know that Watcher had a pretty eventful night yesterday. Somebody hit him and tried to drive away, and local police tracked him down and I guess gave the guy a sternly worded warning and wrote him a ticket or something. So the American justice system is broken, and we all know it. I don't know what Scott's up to, but I know that he was coming home from Labor Day activities in Korea and somehow got stuck in traffic. And let's pray for Scott because it's Asian traffic. So, Lord, who knows? It could be a little bit rough. So, good luck to Scott on getting home. So, since it is just me, we're going to dive right into it, and we'll probably get done a little bit early. But the first tale we want to talk about, bear with me because I'm not Scott or Watcher. I just got to figure this out all on my own. We're going to talk about, are there still swastikas on NATO uniforms? Well, apparently there is, because in Finland, the Finnish Air Force, as you can see in the picture here, has swastikas on some of their Air Force unit insignias. Their story, though, is a little bit weird because they claim that this goes all the way back to when they were. This goes back to pre-Nazi days. I'm sorry, I was confused on what I was thinking right there. It goes back to the pre-Nazi days, although these flags were introduced in 1950. That's not pre-Nazi days. That's right in the middle of the modern life. So I wouldn't really call it pre-Nazi. These unit flags were established in the 50s. There are several of them still out there. And they say that now that they're part of NATO, they're going to have to get rid of them, even though they kind of like them. The problem with this for me is that it validates some of the nonsense that Vladimir Putin was spewing about Nazification and denazification. And it raises the tensions too much with both allies and enemies. Just makes it worse things. Yeah, Robert Schock, it does appear to be they claim it's a symbol of a noble that denoted their Air Force, but that donated to their Air Force. But that was in 1918, and there were already some negative groups using that same symbol. So anyway, Finland claims they're going to get rid of them, trying to modernize and become a more cool guy NATO thing. Um, but for the record, that Finnish noble who donated an aircraft to the Finnish Air Force was a friend of a German pilot, and that's where he got the idea. Hermann Göring was the guy who gave him the idea. So that was the first tale, just a little odds and end action. Another one is that Ursula von der Leyen's aircraft it was traveling, and it became impacted by GPS jamming. Of course, everyone blames the Russians. It's probably who it was, but it was all the way in southern Bulgaria. So I don't know what the range is, but Bulgaria claims it was the Russians. They were forced to land using paper maps, according to the BBC. Threats and intimidation are a regular component of Russia's hostile actions, and added that the incident would reinforce its commitment to ramp up our defense capabilities and support for Ukraine. The Bulgarian government confirmed that during the flight, the satellite signal transmitting information to the plane's GPS system was neutralized. I don't know that it was neutralized. It was probably jammed and made unusable, but neutralized implies something worse. But of course, Dmitry Peskov says that that's incorrect. But a lot of European governments have warned that GPS jamming is rampant throughout Europe due to Russian interference. And that's 100% accurate. They are actually out there doing that. It is becoming an issue. So GPS jamming by Russia continues. If you recall, they began the war with that, and it continues to go on. And this is why we have to know land navigation, right? Get out there, practice your land nav, know what you're doing, right? Know how to operate without it. Our next odds and end is that on the sidelines of the SCO meeting, the Shanghai Cooperation Organization meeting, Xi Jinping and Putin both came out and had a conversation, and both decided to blame the West or blame the United States for things that are going on. Xi Jinping says that we have a Cold War mentality and that we are bullying them and causing all of the problems that we have with them. And Vladimir Putin came out and blamed the West for the war on Ukraine, which he has commonly done ever since it began. His first speech was all about it. They were at the SCO in China, and they had members from all over Asia and Europe there, including Modi of India. So it's been an interesting summit. There was a lot of talk between India and China trying to mend relations and present a united front against the West. I've said it all along that Modi is not exactly our friend. And when he was first elected, we had to issue a waiver because Modi was technically on a do not admit list to the United States for his actions with Indian nationalism and some groups that were not playing well with others there. So Putin says the war didn't start in 2022, but was a result of the coup in Ukraine, which was supported and provoked by the West. On that point, he's really not wrong. Sure, he accelerated things and made an invasion himself in 2022. But the triggering event for all of the events that happened was indeed the 2014 revolution. And once again, we see him making comments about NATO. He made those same comments about Georgia right after he invaded Georgia as well. So as much as I don't want to say it, the guy does have a point. We keep marching further and further to the east, and he's going to strike out and stop that thing happening. So interesting. It's crazy. Xi says they're actually building a much bigger organization with the Shanghai Cooperation Organization than the West is with the EU. But we'll see. We will see. Uh, Shocking breaking news: Xi Jinping and Vladimir Putin blame the United States for all their troubles. Anywho, that's what we have for odds and ends before we dive into the real stories for today. Uh, I'm still checking to see if the other guys pop on here, uh, but I haven't found any of them yet. Oh, hold on. I did actually find someone. I found this guy. This guy hanging out in this back corner room. How are you this morning, Jim?
I'm good, man. Good morning. How is everyone out there? Good to see you, Joe.
Everyone out here is good. I'm going to make an announcement here for people. If Jim ever offer or Old Hong Kong or whatever you want to call him, I didn't mean to do that. If
Don't
Old
worry
Hong
about
Kong
it.
goes up with a bag full of meat and wants to cook it on an open fire for you, let him. The guy knows what he's doing. Uh, Showed up and joined us at a campfire with the students, and we actually had a great time hanging out. So that was really the highlight of the weekend. So cool stuff. Anything big happening in your world today?
No, it's a quiet day. It's Memorial Day. It's important. So, going to be with some friends and go down by the lake, I guess, and cook dinner with people and just have a good old solid American day. But I heard you talking about Xi and Modi, and it's one of those things. It's one of those things that's really difficult for folks to understand. But the Chinese have been a long time pushing this SCO alternative to the Western world. They're getting traction with the non-aligned nations like Brazil and India. And it's really hard for the American system to adapt to this non-aligned thing. They don't get it. And for the Indians, it's been a way of life for their post-colonial period. And they will, as their energy minister said right after Ukraine kicked off, we're going to buy oil at a cheap price because that's our job, right? Our job is to buy cheap oil for the Indian people. So the concept of aligning in the way the Americans align or the Europeans align is not something they're going to play ball with. They're going to play both sides as they can, but China's a major threat to them. If you saw the Indian Navy was in the South China Sea a while back working with the Filipinos. So Indians are supplying the BrahMos missile to the Philippines, the anti-shipping missile. So it's an interesting. I guess it's a dichotomy. I mean, but you're going to see it happen. And yeah, Modi is a Hindu nationalist, and he's entitled to be a Hindu nationalist, right? That's his faith. That's what he does. As long as he doesn't start doing crazy shit outside of his country, his people elect him and put him in power. Um, no more crazy than anyone else who believes in something and does it in their own way. Now, I don't ascribe to that, but uh, I understand the right of individuals to make decisions like that. So I watch the Indians, and my experience with them has been good, but they will do this non-aligned thing on you without much motivation.
Yeah, I suppose that really my main problem with Modi stems from his extraterritorial war on Sikh separatists and others, right? Doing doing wet work inside Canada doesn't sit well with others.
Oh
And
no, that's bad. That's bad joss, man. You don't do that kind of thing. And it's one of the difficulties with sovereign states is they overreach. They do goofy shit sometimes, right? And I would say pissing Canada and us off is not a good idea. But he's under an immense amount of pressure in this post China détente period, where he's going to have to make hard decisions for the Indian people. And he just had the kerfuffle with Pakistan. He's got to offset Pakistan and China as much as he can by dealing with China. So he's between a rock and a hard place. Uh, I don't feel badly for him when it pisses me off or pisses you off or gets Washington all worked up. But I don't think we've handled India very well. So, but shocking, right? DC didn't handle something well.
there was a question in the chat that you're probably the best person to answer, and asked if there's any truth to the rumors that Mexico is planning on up to 50% tariffs on Chinese goods.
I saw that. Yeah, I saw that pop up. Um, My guess is they're talking that way to placate Treasury and somebody in Washington that they're negotiating with. The implementation of that kind of tariffing in Mexico would probably be nearly impossible because of the fluidity of their freight system. I doubt you'd ever see any barriers to entry. The real target of that would be the precursor chemicals, coming in for the narcotics trade, pirated pharmaceuticals, and things that are coming in to be rebranded country of origin so that they don't get hammered as Chinese goods. So it's kind of the maquiladoras rewritten. It'd be hard to do. The scrutiny we would have to apply to it would be epic. And as everyone knows, it's really hard to work in Mexico because it's dangerous.
Well, I think that any statement that comes out of the Mexican federal government pretty much applies solely to Mexico City.
Exactly. Like the Vatican making Italian policy.
Yeah. And all of the ports along the west side of Mexico and points south are all controlled by Hutchison Worldwide and therefore controlled by the PLA, right? So,
yeah, it's not. It isn't a friendly milieu.
Yeah. Well, it's one of those things too, where a lot of times Americans figure the world is America, and life is not the same outside of America, right? We don't have strong federal government in Mexico. So.
But I'll tell you what, a McDonald's burger tastes like a McDonald's burger almost anywhere you get it. So there is safe haven out there.
They are a safe haven. They are a safe haven. See, I'm not one who has been to the Beijing or Moscow McDonald's. I have not haven't done it.
I worked in one. I worked in one when I was 12. So it wasn't in the United States. So that shows you how long McDonald's has been outside the United States, right?
Yeah. There's a question for Hunch for you. It says, what could we, the U.S., do to entice or bring the nations of the second island chain back into the fold?
Money.
Money.
Money. I mean, Coast Guard's out there. You got coasties running up and down. You got the British and the Australians and everybody racing around. It's all about money. It's all about quality of life. It's all about respect. Get the Chinese out of the fishery zones so that there's not the overlapping economic pull. Buy all of their fish, right? Anything that they can do economically, help them do. Populations are small. It's not big ticket stuff, but the Chinese are willing to be really corrupt, overtly so. We are not. Foreign corrupt practices pops up again. You and I have talked about that for years. But what it comes down to is the United States is very legalistic about its international engagements outside of the intelligence community, but you really need to induce all these people to work with you. And you need to have the liberty to offset whatever the Chinese or other foreign entity are trying to do in the marketplace and try to win hearts and minds. And if you have to win hearts and minds by playing a little bit of a dirty pool on the side with money, it's been done. I mean, GWAT, how much money, how many bags of money went out the back of a C-130 in GWAT, right? Lots and lots and lots. But for some reason, we've forgotten we did that, or we don't like to talk about it, but it's going to have to continue because we're in an economic war now. The SCO being reinvigorated, it was on life support for a while, right? And what's happened now is we've stumbled into pushing the marginal participants back into it as an offset to their perceived risk on Washington. We need to tighten up the ship on messaging in Washington. And we need to take advantage of what we've done. We've got a great tariff regimen. It's like a value-added tax, right? Everybody knows that. It does increase prices slightly, but it puts money directly into the Treasury. It's a really good way to raise money. But what Trump needs to do is offset the impact on the American people. And that's not by lowering rates at the Fed. It's by adjusting the income tax structure and saying, hey, that's really stupid how we double gouge Americans. So let's clean up the income tax, go to a flat tax, or begin to roll it back annually every year, see what the revenue from the VAT tax is from the tariffs, and then get rid of the damn income tax, right? We need to modernize the tax regime in the United States, the way we generate revenue for the Treasury. And I think he's on the right track. He just needs to talk to it. And they need to be really aggressive because they've got 12 months.
Okay, that was a graduate level discussion, but absolutely, I agree 100%. Um, Man, we survived without an income tax for a long time, and we did that through tariffs and through various other business type taxes or commerce type taxes rather than income tax.
Yeah, absolutely. It's the way I think it was the way it was originally perceived by the founders, right? And everybody goes back to the founders to defend all this stuff. You got to go back and look at it and say, what did what were they really meaning, right? What did they mean, and what did it look like in the first 50 years? There's a reason. There's a reason the revenue cutters showed up, right? It's like, this is what we got to do. But then when they lowered the income tax, it became this burdensome stop to the economy, and it created a whole subclass of high priests of tax in Washington and at the Treasury, and they have undue power over the citizenry. So that all needs to be repealed and pulled back, but it needs to be done carefully and slowly because it's the way the government makes money. So I actually think Trump is going to pop up and talk about that soon. I think it's going to be one of the September things, which is we really got to reform the IRS. I know he's been closing offices across the country. That's a good start. I mean, you don't need hundreds of thousands of people to orchestrate this. You need an automated system that collects fees on transactions, and everybody else to get out of the way, and you can protect the lower income people from that. You can give them an exemption card or whatever it is, and certain goods and services are exempt. Europe does it. I think it'll happen here, but I think that's what the tariffs are, is a transition strategy.
Yeah. Income tax is proving the point that there's nothing more permanent than a temporary government program.
That's so true, man. Now, you can't let them both run. You can't let them both run uncontrolled, Joe. That's
I've
so true.
a lot more money in my bank account if every time the U.S. Postal Service told me they were having a temporary price increase, if that was factually true.
Yeah.
They're only temporary until they have another one. So
yeah, well, the Postal Service is a tragedy now. I'm always amazed that it works. It is really it's quite a kind of Rube Goldberg kind of machine, but it does work.
yeah,
and it does serve an important function, but it isn't a competitor to FedEx and DHL and all those guys. And I think it just needs to be repositioned for what it is. It's an important mechanism of communication for the citizenry. And instead of making it this highly competitive thing that does everything, it's kind of like a broken Ginsu knife. It's still got a blade on it, but you wouldn't choose to use it every day. I think that's where the Postal Service is. But the union's big and it's politically powerful and it touches every district in the country. So it has undue influence on Washington.
absolutely. So that covers our odds and ends. We're going to dive into Venezuela in a second. I just wanted to mention that I'll be in what's that place called? North Carolina next month with NC Scout. We're going to be at Mountain Readiness. Whatever that weekend is, stand by. The 17th through the 19th, we'll be there. Angry American will be there. Whole bunch of others. And you know what's great? A lot of you in the chat will be there. So stop on by, say hello to us. We're looking forward to it. We're going to have a one-day break on the 20th, but then the 21st to the 23rd, I'll be running a fieldcraft class down there at Matt's place. And then the 24th through 26th, we'll be running the scout course. And the 27th to the 29th, we're doing the recce course. So 9 days in the field, doing some hardcore training, getting you up to speed and getting you ready for the bad times ahead. Or good times, depending on your perspective. I don't know. You might be a different kind of guy. But get registered because spots are filling up in all of those classes. And certainly go online and register for Mountain Readiness. It's going to be a good event. Alpha Charlie Concepts, I see you there in the chat, and Mountain Readiness would just be a great thing for you to pop in at. I'm just throwing that out there, um, and I need to hear from you about something in Marpat. You know what I'm talking about in Marpat Tiger. Uh, anyway, moving on. Kyber Optics. At brushbeater.store is where you can find Kyber Optics, made by our dear friend and Sea Scout. He actually had these. He actually designed them and had them made. So we've got a lot of good stuff here. I personally have the mini dot optic, which I really like. But I heard a rumor that very soon I will have a 1 to 10 LPVO and a 3 to 18 by 50 scope. That's the rumor, and it's going to be pretty cool. So I will let you know when I have them, and I'll get them tested. I know that our friend Hunch is waiting for that Jambia optic to be available, and so am I. So be watching for that stuff. Check out Matt's store. He has a lot of great stuff on there. Brushbeater.store is your place for optics and radio gear and all kinds of other good stuff. So there we go. Jim, have you heard there might be war brewing with Venezuela?
Only from you, Joe.
From me.
I haven't read anything in the paper, seen anything on the television that would substantiate that. But from you, I've been hearing it for 3 years. So, yeah.
Yeah, it's been on the U.S.'s to-do list for quite a while. And there's a lot going on there. So I figured we would just start with a quick recap. Then we'll jump into a couple of these stories. This is from our friend over at the Tren de Aragua Tracker. And he lists a whole bunch of the stories that are happening and things like that. The timeline is that on the 14th, we said we're going to deploy some P-8 Poseidons, 1 naval vessel, and 1 submarine to the region. Then the very next day, we added the Iwo Jima Amphibious Ready Group, which was actually, yeah. What's funny about that is they were already they were slated to be going to the European theater, the Med, and they were shifted and sent there. So who knows what happened that made that happen? But they always come with a group of destroyers for air defense, and a Tico-class cruiser is on the way. I don't know what would have changed their mind about that, Jim. You got any ideas?
Nah. The Bolivaran revolution has kind of run its course, and I think people are just getting tired of it. So having the Chinese ensconced in the northern part of South America is very irritating, especially given that Hutchison Whampoa controls the Panama Canal access. And we haven't been able to rationalize that through commercial discussions because the Chinese government controls what Hutchison does these days. We'll see what happens. I'm hopeful that the regional support that Venezuela had, that Maduro had, will begin to decay. It seems the Colombians are on board for changing it, but you have Nicaragua and Brazil kind of playing the Lula game, and the Sandinistas are still around, sadly. So I think what's going to happen is it's going to be tougher than we think, but I would guess it's going to happen this time. Trump doesn't take no for an answer very well, and I think that this one is emblematic. My concern with us doing it is it does open the doors for China to take similar action in Southeast Asia and say, well, you do it, we do it, right? So the risks of hemispherical action are that it'll happen in a hemisphere you don't want it to happen in. And I don't know about you, but I would say we're unprepared for a multi-domain engagement, even if it's near war and not actually war.
Right. And Venezuela has appealed to China for some help on that. But as far as the ships, we know that the Iwo's whole amphibious ready group is going. The cruiser that's going is the Lake Erie. The submarine is the Newport News. So if you have anybody in those ships, there they are. And the destroyer contingent is the Gravely, the Dunham, and the Sampson. And they claim it's for counter narcotics, but those are really the wrong tools for that job.
Yeah, that's it.
It's interesting they would do that, but also pretty odd. Last Sunday, the French said they're sending additional ships to the Caribbean for counter drug operations. So it'll be interesting. We'll see what happens. But the Tren de Aragua tracker post has a whole bunch of info on it. But I've got a couple of other articles and stories that dig a little deeper in some of these things. And some of it's interesting, like Colombia's moves in this were a little bit interesting. First, let's go with Maduro and his brilliant comments here. If I can get this thing to work. I am no watcher on the web, y'all. It's going to take me a second.
So just understand that Maduro doesn't like Marpat, right? So this is a truism.
So he should be an automatic lose for that very reason. I mean, automatically. His camo uniforms are a little sketchy, but he says there's no way the U.S. can invade after they deployed their ships. Let's point out that the largest ship that they have, I think, is a frigate. So they don't really have a whole lot. All they say in this story is warships, but the Venezuelan warships are gunboats at best, coastal patrol craft. They're not very powerful ones. But Maduro says there's no way they could enter Venezuela, vowing that his country was well prepared to defend its peace, sovereignty, and territorial integrity. Meanwhile, we've made no threats to actually invade. But this picture that's on the screen right now, this was like right out. Remember the movie? What was the movie? The Expendables, where the guys all paint their faces. That's literally what's going on right here. I like how the special forces were not trusted with magazines and ammunition in the presence of the president. They were a little bit worried they might launch a coup. Somebody might try to cash in on that 50 million
on public television. Yeah. So the thing about Venezuela is everybody forgets. You got Colombia, you've got Brazil, you've got Guyana, you've got all these border states, right? You've got the British, the French, and the Dutch all own islands just off the coast and up the Antilles. It's everybody's there, right? The French launch their rockets out of that part of South America, right? It's all right there. It's a very valuable corner. Now that Guyana has massive, and repeat, massive offshore oil, it's become something in the crown of the Atlantic thinkers. So think the EU, United States, and our friends, erstwhile friends, if there are friends after Trump's been slapping them around. They seem to be coordinating with us on this one because everybody's got a dog in the fight. And it's about security, energy, territory, and it is about securing the Atlantic Basin. The Chinese would love to keep a footprint in the Atlantic Basin. And sadly, after Maduro, we're going to have to deal with Cuba. And I think the reason nobody wants to deal with Venezuela and Cuba is it's going to be a sucking wound of aid for decades if we take responsibility for these countries. You're going to have to pay to maintain them, and we've learned that that's really a fool's errand in the long run. We're not very good at it. We shouldn't be running foreign countries, but knocking off a dictator is not a bad idea if there's somebody in the wings to take over as the opposition leader. But you have to have them prepared, and you've got to have an economic model. For Venezuela, it's a tough one because their oil is thick and ugly, and we only have one old refinery to actually refine that oil. So it isn't a boon. I mean, beaches are awesome. Food's great. Folks are nice. I love the place, but sadly I haven't been able to go for a long, long time. Yeah, we'll see what happens. I'm hopeful for them, Joe.
Well, South America is a beautiful place, so it'd be great if it could turn around. But they've had decades and decades of mismanagement and all of that. But if you want to hear something about media bias, check out this line. Maduro, who succeeded socialist firebrand Hugo Chavez in 2013. Socialist firebrand is a very charitable description of Hugo Chavez.
Well, that's
It was,
Mamdani's name, right? Socialist Firebrand. Isn't that our future New York mayor?
yeah, well, that is interesting. That actually that kind of
It
plays right into that.
harmonizes. It harmonizes nicely with our blue state, blue city politics these days.
Yeah. I think that one of the biggest tells on this, though, is that on Tuesday, Caracas petitioned the United Nations to intervene in the dispute by demanding the immediate cessation of U.S. military deployment of the Caribbean. So that's interesting. They're trying to use the international tools that are available against us, taking a book out of our own playbook, right, or a sheet out of our own playbook. The other thing is that some interesting moves have been made around the Colombian border. Venezuela deployed 15,000 troops to the Colombia border. Colombia deployed 20,000 troops to the Venezuelan border, but they're not to fight each other. They are most likely to fight ELN. Matt had a theory, and I kind of agree with him, that we may have been attempting to use the ELN to cause some sort of unrest in Venezuela. The ELN is a right-wing militia that was formed to fight against FARC, and they found that drug money was actually kind of cool. They liked it. It was good cash. And then they became essentially mercenary. They will do work for whomsoever pays them. And I think that seeing all of these deployments exactly to the region where ELN is in control tells you that perhaps we had some ideas there.
Yeah, I had some friends who lived in those mountains, and it's an interesting place, that borderland. I think there's a little spinning. I think Matt was commenting on it, and it is an interesting place. The highest and best use of it is that it's difficult to get in and out of. The best product comes out of there is coffee. There's awesome coffee production in that part of Venezuela. So, yeah, a friend of mine had 10,000 hectares in those mountains, and his family moved from Germany in 1945. It was pretty interesting. So we'll see what happens down there. But there is a right-wing contingent in those mountains, always has been, and they don't like being messed with. They're landowners, they're farmers, they're ranchers, and the narco trade has really twisted that whole part of the world. So I wouldn't want to have to go down there, maybe to get coffee, right?
Well, Juan Valdez is still wandering around out there just trying to sell his coffee. And
that was a good try. That was a good effort. Come on, man. Get on Juan's side.
We'll see who gets the movie reference. Maybe it's the Lindo brand. Check out the Lindo brand. And Tin Man Metal. Yes, the Venezuelan special forces use the Steyr AUG. The rest of the Venezuelan military uses locally produced AK-47s. There is a very large AK plant in Venezuela, and just for future reference, it only makes 7.62 by 39 AK-47s. So keep your 7.62 by 39 ammo. Don't trade it all in for 5.45 by 39, no matter what Jim tells you.
It's true, man. It's true. I can't think of anybody in the last 3 years who said anything about 5.45 except the Ukrainian guy. And the Ukrainian guy said, "I need as much as I can get."
I think a guy said that to us a while ago after I mentioned 7.62 by 39. So
yep.
I'm always looking for a good deal on 7.62 by 39. Not that I would. I'm a man of peace. I don't really need any. So
that's a great deer ram. Never argue with it.
It is. So this next one is one of those hopey changey articles where share the Los Angeles Times, which would of course take the Hispanic worldview. As U.S. fleet steams towards the coast, Venezuelans face uncertainty, fear, and for some hope. One would actually hope that is the case, that maybe it'll inspire someone to rise up. The U.S. Navy buildup is framed as anti-smuggling, but invasion rumors swirl. I don't really think an invasion is where we will go. I'd like to get your opinion on this. I think that we're more likely to enforce some sort of a blockade and try to push for regime change from the inside. But I don't know. What do you think?
Yeah, I think what's going on is they've squeezed the flow of narcotics money. So there was a flurry of articles about a week and a half ago about interdicting Chinese illegal money laundering out of Mexico. Right, that was all of a sudden Treasury was given the go ahead to begin to play aggressively on that. They know who these people are. It's all run through Chinese banks. It's run through places like Hong Kong. It's run through other places, but the majority of that banking will come through Hong Kong, same place that Hutchison Whampoa is headquartered. Um, the Chinese government's ability to use the triads and the what I would call off-book money movements have been going on for a long time. It's just become very aggressive now. But it's how Mexico and these other South American countries convert their monies. So the Chinese are making a hell of a lot of money out of it. But it also is the majority of the economic production in South and Central America that is off books is coming out of the narcotics trade. So Venezuela makes its money doing the narcotics trade. The concept of being a sovereign country is almost a secondary issue. It's a narco state, and it'll continue to be a narco state, because it's profitable, right? The difficulty is the Chinese have gotten their nose into it, and so there's a quid pro quo. The Chinese get to do what they want in Venezuela in a lot of ways, and it's going to be hard to displace them because the economic, again, you get back to the economic impact. It'll depress the whole region. And then we'll have instability, and then you'll have migration, right? I mean, this is the cycle we've been dealing with, which is, the place goes to hell. Everybody wants to come here, and then you have to deal with the border issue. Trump's closed the border. Now that the border's closed, we can actually go fix Central and Northern South America. And I wish them all very much luck, because we have to be able to export a lot of people on airplanes that have been here illegally, and we need a place to send them. And if South America is not ready to take them, it's going to be a very difficult impasse. But I have a feeling they're going to get induced to do it. We've had really good support from Bukele in El Salvador. I think some other leaders are quietly supportive, but we got to keep hope alive down there. And the way you do that is with money. I mean, back to the discussion of how you do the second island chain, same thing. Targeted money, make sure it works. Not USAID dropping things out of the back of C-130s, but getting on the ground and really trying to help people out.
Well, what's interesting is the same thing that I said about Putin will also apply to Maduro. Anyone who has the ability to depose him by force is not going to be friendly to us, and is probably going to be even worse. So it's one of the risky things about coups and relying on them and relying on internal change. The last remotely friendly guy who tried it, as you point out regularly, was pretty much a farce and highly ineffective. With the Guaido, was that his name? Was not effective.
Repeat.
Yeah.
Now well, you have a situation where the opposition parties are always a problem, right? Because they're constantly just sniping at everybody. They don't have a plan. And, I think a good example of that, Joe, is what happened in Syria, right? Everybody's like, oh, Syria's been liberated. He's gone. Well, okay. So ISIS remnants take the place over and everybody's cheering them on. It's a rough transition. And, Venezuela has been beaten down. All of the money, all of the business owners, all the entrepreneurial zeal, it's all in Miami, right? It's left. It's been gone for decades. So restarting countries where you've got a diaspora, bringing the diaspora back in is nearly impossible because everybody who stayed behind doesn't want the wealthy guys from Miami to show back up and take possession of the goods, right? So we've discussed that ad nauseum in the Middle East, talking about Iran and other countries. Nobody wants the diaspora populations to come in and wield their money. It failed in Armenia. It failed it will fail in Iran if they make bad moves. And Venezuela is going to be very, very similar. The difference is Venezuelans are a lot of fun. They're very nice people. You could do something with Venezuela quickly because of its proximity to the United States and its commonality. It's easier. Let's put it this way. It's easier to adapt a Christian country to the discussion than it is to do something in the Middle East. So regime change in Venezuela, I think, is a lower hurdle than a Middle Eastern country, but it's still a big hurdle. I mean, we've watched Haiti kind of float in the mire for decades and decades and decades, and it's very hard to turn a country around that doesn't have its own cohesion.
Well, and in all honesty, once you get into the countryside and out of Caracas, Venezuela has a lot more in common with the American West than it does with a lot of other parts of South America. They have rodeos. They have a big horse culture. They've got a lot of things similar to our own Western culture. It is a good place. It's just led by some very bad people. But interesting thing in this article makes a statement that I find interesting. We've already seen it all, said Mauricio Castillo. It's not that we've lost faith in the possibility of real change, but we are fed up. We cannot just stop our lives and put them on hold waiting for something to happen. Boy, that's a great statement, right? So somebody has to take it into their own hands. Like I mentioned about people who complain about the state of America, at some point you have to stop complaining and you have to do something, whether that's stopping people from harassing others on the train or bus, or stepping into a situation where people are injured and trying to help. At some point, you've got to take responsibility for what's going on where you live and do something about it. Get involved, get local, and do what you can. So hopefully that's...
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah.
I agree. We've had a lot of friends try to run for office. It helps, and it reminds people that the status quo is not acceptable in most cases. So there are a lot of people who just feel they can't have impact, but it makes a lot of sense to show up for meetings and listen to what's going on. So participate in your community is an important thing.
Get involved, do something about it. Hey, well, I've got almost 600 of you watching. Let me just say, head over to tactical-wisdom.com and sign up, follow it, and maybe buy a book while you're there. And then head on over to tacticalwisdom.locals.com and sign up there too. So get on it, make it happen. All right. So this is about the people hoping something will change in their country. But y'all know how I feel about hope and change, right? You have to actually, you need to do something. I don't go with socialist slogans from known socialists. Something interesting here is Hugo Chavez getting a little help from his friends. I get by with a little help from my friends, if you remember that old song. Apparently, he is going to as well. They now have a pretty active, get out of there. They have a pretty active program thanks to their friends in Iran. They recently bought some designs from Iran and bought some actual drones from Iran to get their program going. When Hugo Chavez appeared on a nationwide TV broadcast way back in 2012, he said they were manufacturing drones. The drones they're making are of an Iranian design, and they are continuing to buy more from Iran in order to resist the American imperialism, as they say. Oh my goodness, this page really wants me to sign up. I'm not going to. We've mentioned this many, many times here on the show that there is a long-standing tie between Iran and Venezuela, and that was facilitated by our good friends in Hezbollah. And they've been active in that region for a long time. I actually believe there's still an Iranian contingent on an island just off of Venezuela that rotates through there, IRGC troops. And there is a lot of activity that goes on between Iran and Venezuela, but a lot of folks don't think of a Middle Eastern connection in South America, but it does absolutely exist.
There's an article from 4 or 5 years ago, maybe even more, that Mahan Air, the Iranian airline, had an A340, so long range 4-engine thingy, that used to make weekly runs back and forth between Tehran and Caracas. So it's been ongoing for a long time, and the Iranians are very active in South America for, again, smuggling and illegal activity, much like Hezbollah and the PLO used to. Very active in Paraguay, large Palestinian emigre populations in Central and South America. People forget that, but a lot of them left in the 20s and 30s and ended up populating Central and South America. So in the major cities, a lot of the trading and business activity is circles around Middle Eastern emigres. Many of them are quite nice, actually. A lot of them are Maronite Christians or other type of Christian, and the communities are pretty tight.
However, there are several towns that originate on a straight line from the tri-border area, this is Paraguay, that go all the way up through Mexico and lead towards the U.S. And the towns are entirely Islamic, and they are run by Hezbollah and Hamas folks.
What do you call them? You call them rat lines, right?
As a rat line. Ironically, we're both saying rat line at the same time. But it's been a long-standing relationship there. Also, the Iranian drone carrier made a port call in Venezuela, year before last. So
yeah,
there is always that Iranian link to think about. And the Shahed drone is not something to laugh at, right? So they are there too. The Venezuelan regime has allowed Hezbollah to operate in Latin America, and never forget that the terror attack that was launched in Buenos Aires was Hezbollah, and it was facilitated through Venezuela and other places into Argentina. There have been several Venezuelan government officials who were of Lebanese or Iranian descent, right? The former defense minister and oil minister, he might even still be it, Tariq, whatever his name was. He might still be in office. I'm not sure. I'll have to look that up. But they have people who have ties to Hezbollah in their government and ties to Iran within their government. So I just wanted to highlight that article to show that partnership is indeed still there between them. And they are out there. So, and the last one I have for this one, which is interesting, is you mentioned Guyana a minute or two ago, and I wanted to talk about that. Guyana is holding some elections in the Essequibo region, the one that's under dispute with Venezuela. And the good folks in Guyana were running a patrol boat along the river, carrying these ballots to various parts to get the vote done. They claim that they got fired on from the Venezuelan shore yesterday. And there's no way of confirming it, but their patrol boat returned fire into Venezuela. So we've been talking for quite a while about the potential of conflict between Guyana and Venezuela over the oil-rich Essequibo region. You brought it up just a few minutes ago. This is really an interesting development. I really hadn't figured on there actually being shots fired. There have been a lot of discussions about the potential for Venezuelan troops already being on the Guyana side of the river, but we haven't seen any confirmation of that. What are your thoughts on this?
My guess is it probably happened, and if anybody dug into it, they'd say it was just gang warfare or whatever, separatist gang, blah blah blah. I mean, there's always an argument for that, but the Venezuelans will try to be as disruptive as they could possibly be at this point. Everybody would say, common sense would say, okay, they're going to be quiet and they're going to back down and play this. I don't think they have any incentive to do that. And I think the Chinese are probably paying for some of this disruption. We've seen that across Southeast Asia of late. So it's a common ploy. Engage in arm waving and hugging and SCOing and alternative to Western post-colonialist power, and then begin to foment violence. So we've seen violence in Southeast Asia. We've seen violence in Latin America, it seems. And so everybody's positioning to move chess pieces in the next couple of weeks. And hopefully we don't lose a lot of people, and hopefully don't get into an intractable war. Those would be very bad outcomes.
Yeah, this is also proof that history repeats itself and works in cycles, right? Because when I was in the Marine Corps, our enemies spoke Spanish, and now we're back to that, I guess. So,
what's interesting about that is that the peoples of these countries are not necessarily anti-American. And even with all of the stuff that's gone on in Venezuela for the last, 20 some years about it being Bolivarian and anti-colonialist and Marxist and all this stuff, the average Venezuelan, as you said, they just continue with their lives and try to survive. It's been a really rough run. But this thing with Guyana is clearly global politics. And again, to repeat, the Dutch have a warship, the British have a warship, the French have a warship off the coast. They've kept it really small. It's like coastal patrol boat type thing, a couple 100 feet. But I have a feeling they're going to get reinforced with frigates and more capabilities. And I'm going to guess that they're moving Marine troops into those various islands. So you'll have the Dutch Marines, the French Marines, and the Royal Marines very active in that area. So I think it's a full court press on clearing up Venezuela, but who knows? We will see.
Well, both Dutch and French Marines have bases in the region, and actually relatively close to.
Yep. And they're experts on the region.
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah. So they have a surveillance capacity that most people don't pay attention to, but they know exactly what's going on down there. And they are allies. So it's going to be interesting to understand how this all shakes out, but it's worth watching from a historical standpoint. But let's hope everybody's effective and safe.
And the sides are really lining up because Petro and Maduro just entered into an agreement, a mutual defense agreement. Colombia said that an attack on Venezuela would be considered an attack on Colombia, and that they would come to Venezuela's defense. And of course, vice versa. We're all sending Marines down there, vowing to protect the territorial integrity of Guyana. But I will point out, as I frequently do, that this article about Guyana appears in the Hindustan Times, because Guyana is
uncanny. It's uncanny, man.
Yeah, it's part of their diaspora. So.
No, anyway. It's agitprop. It's agitprop. There's so much of that going on right now.
Yeah,
you gotta read things with a jaundiced eye. I mean, you were sounding off this morning about that headline that troops had landed in Venezuela, going, this is just garbage. You got to call garbage out on the internet as quickly as you see it. And there is an immense amount of money and effort going into disinformation right now about all of this. So there's so many players, and they're so uncoordinated. The Chinese are not coordinated well with the Russians. The U.S. is not coordinating well with its allies on messaging. So you're getting fragments of stuff that is just absurd, actually. So that'll continue. So read carefully, read thoroughly, and research the hell out of stuff.
That's funny, because as you mentioned misinformation in the media, that's what we're going to talk about. The Aussies. The Aussies have decided that they have had enough, and they are now going to stand up against what has been happening there. First the Brits did, and now the Aussies do. Kind of the way it works, right? The British do it first, and everybody else follows along. But it looked like we had mass protests all over Australia over the weekend. And you'll be amazed to find out what CNN said about these people. Do you know who these people were, according to CNN?
AFD members that have been thrown out of Germany.
Very close, very close. Almost word for word. They're all neo-Nazis. Of course they are. Of course they are. There's some video here. Reason why I shared this one is looking at the mass numbers of folks who are out there, and pretty much all over all over Australia too. It was not just in Melbourne or Sydney. It was all over. A lot of different towns had protests against mass migration. And here's the thing: migration is a good thing when it begins to come in and folks blend, and we make a culture of it. When you blend, when you start coming in with mass people from other cultures, and it begins to change the culture, that's where conflict comes into play. It's better to assimilate with each other and each side take a little bit from each other. But when one side demands everyone else on the planet change to them, it becomes a little bit different. And Australia's always had a bit of an independent streak, and here they are. And I think this is interesting, tying with the stories that also came out over the weekends on the mass non-compliance with Australia's draconian gun laws. Those two things are going to come into play at some point, right? The upset at mass migration and the mass non-compliance with gun laws. It's not a good mix.
Yeah, you're seeing an interesting trend across the old Commonwealth footprint, which is in order to play by these globalist rules, they've curtailed individual liberties that had been assumed, and within the Commonwealth, they're assumed. You know, if you feel like you're free to do something, you can go express a grievance, but you have to go into the court of law and it's a single case. There isn't an overriding understanding of the concept of individual liberty on the way the United States Constitution visualizes it. And the concept of freedom of speech doesn't exist.
Correct.
They have a concept of it, but it's case by case, and they can make claims against you that you then have to go to court and defend against. And in the system, it isn't assumed that you're able to speak the truth from your perspective, right? You can't go out and say, as an example, I'm an Englishman and I don't like the fact that all of these foreigners have come to my country illegally and are now twisting the way the country operates. In the United States, you can do that. So around the world, many of these citizens believed they could, but they've been sadly corrected by their governments of late, which is you can't say that. And even though you believe it, and it appears that it may be true in most cases, you still can't say it because somebody might be upset. And so these subsets of populations might be upset. And a good example would be what happened here in the United States with transgenderism. It was so overblown as a mechanism of the left to manipulate public opinion in the last couple of election cycles that it got way out in front of what most Americans believe. But we don't have a law against saying, geez, that got way out ahead of what most Americans believe. In the UK or in Germany or in Australia, if you come out and say some of these things, somebody complains, it could become a criminal complaint against you. So it's just a very slightly different milieu, but it's become really rather dangerous. And so people are waking up and saying, hey, this is not the covenant we had with our government. And they're angry because their way of life has been so altered. So I kind of understand their grievances, but you got to protest legally in these countries because they will lock you up, as they've been showing of late.
And I think the biggest problem with that is that they say your post offended someone, or the words you're saying on the street are offending others. You can't make laws based upon subjective feelings. They have to be objective. Subjective feelings like being offended. How do you define that, and how do you point out who is right and who is wrong when the only requirement of proof is that you're offended? Well, your speech offended that person. Okay, well, him being offended offends me. Arrest him too. And eventually you end up at the point where people can use the state as a cudgel against each other.
Yeah, the laws I keep hearing, and this is just kind of little slices of what I see out of the European press and out of Australia, New Zealand, is it's good order, common order, and maintaining order. What they'll say is if you get out on the street and you're, let's say, reading the Bible on a soapbox on a corner in the UK, they'll come up and say, okay, you're upsetting people. And the minister will say, okay, I'm sorry it upsets people, but I'm free to do this. Well, yes, you are free to do this, but you're not free to cause civil disorder. And what this is doing is it will create a problem for us. This is the police speaking, right? So you're initiating civil disorder, and they shut them down on those grounds. And it, I think it's being overdone. Somebody needs to turn around to the people who are complaining and say, you can get up on your soapbox and say this too. But in the parlance of the police, their job is to maintain order, and they will literally deprive the speaker of their rights to speak because it's interrupting social order. Uncomfortable I mean, it makes me uncomfortable, but I'm an American. I watch it, and I hope my friends in the UK and my friends in Australia have the right to speak out, because most of them are great guys and girls. So yeah, it's saddening actually to see that happen in the Commonwealth.
I read this book once about, where it says, oh, it's causing discomfort to people. It said, do not believe that I have come to bring peace. I have come to bring sword. Anywho.
Oh, Joe, it's Monday, not Sunday.
Yeah. Well,
it is Memorial Day, though.
Patrick asks, not being up to speed with what is going on with the mass non-compliance of gun laws in Australia. Over the weekend, some reports were ran about how many guns there are outside of the cities in Australia. And what happened was, yes, when the Australians went around and collected up the guns and destroyed them all, a lot of folks just buried them or put them in the floorboards, or, as is famous in Australia, put them between the walls. And those guns are still out there. And the number is increasing rather than going down. It's just like anything else, right? If you force it underground, you actually make the market thrive more than if you just let it go on the way that it was. So
I'm gonna guess 303 ammo is very valuable now in Australia.
Yes, because there are a lot of SMLEs, short magazine Lee Enfields, that got put in floorboards. So
they sure did. Even the sporterized ones, those ugly little sporters.
Yeah, with a little jungle style. Yeah, it's good stuff. Good stuff. But in Perth, things got a little bit spicy during the protests, and I'm hoping that I can get this shared here. I'm way slower at this than Scott and the others, but share. This is the scene in Perth, or I'm sorry, Melbourne, not Perth. It got a little bit spicy, and there was some little street combat there. And I like how all these people are fighting, and the one guy gets out there and sprays his pepper spray. Like that's going to have some impact. Anyway,
yeah, pepper spray, man.
Yeah,
tragic. So Melbourne's a neat town, and it's a town of migrants. It's a lot of Greek, Italian heritage down there. It's clearly a different cross section now, but I think there's some reasonably angry people whose parents came and participated in the legal way, and they're watching the twists and turns. Many of them left their European countries because they were under duress, and they had no freedoms. They went to Australia to seek freedom, and now they're probably seeing some curtailment of those expectations. So I understand their angst. I think Australia will sort it out. I got a lot of faith in them.
Yeah, as I understand it, this was a response to a pro-Palestinian march, and that got a little bit different. Hey, listen, I'm just going to be honest with you. If you support Hamas, you deserve whatever happens to you. Hamas is a horrible terror organization. Sorry, can't help.
There was an interesting series of polls that were released on how much of the Palestinian territories support Hamas, and the numbers are catastrophic. Which is, you've got 70 to 80% of the population supporting Hamas, supporting the maintenance of Hamas as the control in Gaza, supporting armed Hamas as that mechanism for control. So, it's an intractable problem, and I don't envy the Israelis having to clean it up, and I feel really horrible for the average Palestinian. But most of the Palestinians support what Hamas is and what Hamas did. So it makes it really, really hard to kind of separate the two issues. And I think there were two different polls too. So kind of, averaging them, they were very sad to see.
Yeah, Durna, this is an excellent point. The flag being burned would be offensive, so somebody should be arrested for that.
You see, but those are not the people who threaten civil disorder, right? So one of the things in the post GWAT kind of cycle is that we've been placating Islam for so long. Those are the people who really, really complain, specifically in the UK, and they're used to getting away with freedom of movement. So it's clear that they got a little over their skis down there in Melbourne and pissed off a bunch of the locals, probably because they were stopping and impeding commerce on the street, which is, you guys got a restaurant, you get a bunch of meatheads out there blocking traffic, you're going to have a really, really bad day. So it can be as base as that, or it can be, I don't like these people who broke the rules and showed up here and are now dominating our city. I mean, imagine if you own a bodega in New York that's been surrounded by protests for the last 2 years. It would suck.
Well, it's the same point that we can make about the UK, right? So if you got a big problem with Muslim gangs that are coming in and sexually harassing and trafficking your girls, what's the best way to lower the temperature? I know. Let's arrest a 14-year-old girl trying to escape from human trafficking. That'll do it. For those who don't know, there is more to the Maya story, right? She was listed as missing, her and her sister. And the man who is making that video that she threatened with the axe and the knife is known to be a pimp and human trafficker. So that's the part that the British government didn't want you to learn, but it is there. So,
we see stuff like this in the United States, and this is me kind of expounding. There is often a tie between domestic security activities and the maintenance of criminal activity, right?
Oh, yes.
So there will be criminal activity, and the police will go in and say, we have criminal activity. This group of people is involved in criminal activity. And the security agencies will say, they're also engaged in other things, and we won't tell you what those are, but do not arrest them and put the case away. And we've seen that in the United States many, many times. My guess is that's what happened within these communities in some of these British cities. And again, I don't have any data in front of me. Just my instincts would say that there is a conflict between domestic security discussions and law enforcement discussions. And to put it in Joe's words, they allowed these young women to be trafficked. And I think that is what's fomented this outrage about it. But it was seen as an issue of security and probably one of social order, right? So you get a double whammy, which is cops turn their hands up and go, we were told to back away. The state wanted access to these individuals for purposes other than protecting young women, and you get that quid pro quo. And the moral and ethical trade-offs in this lead back to our first comments about what do you do in the second island chain. You play gray zone, and you play gray zone really, really hard. And I have to say, we are not very good at gray zone.
Yeah. I think our biggest mistake in the Pacific most recently was partially caused by Australia and partially caused by us not putting our foot down on Australia, was when we ceded the Solomons to the Chinese. So a bad move.
Big silliness down there. But the French are really pissed off about all this. The Brits are pretty active in that area. I think you're going to see a resurgence of concern. But once a nuclear power gets into something, it's really hard to lever them out. It just becomes another point of risk.
In World War II, we wound up expending a lot of men and energy to defend Australia from Japanese invasion. In World War III, we're going to spend a lot of men and material to protect Australia from Chinese invasion. So at some point, they gotta take responsibility for their own security. I wanted to address a couple of comments. I've been watching some of the live streams of the protests there, and it's sad to see a lot of infighting on the right as well. Let me be honest with you. A lot of that is by design with agitator plants. They want to make it look like the right is violent and attacking each other. By the way, I swear that one guy in the video who was just on the screen could be Thomas Rousseau's cousin. If this video was in the U.S., I would swear that was Thomas Rousseau from what's the name of that crazy Patriot Front, or a Fed. But then I repeat myself. And then another one right here was some people on the right make their mistake of supporting Hamas simply because they dislike Israel. Truer words were never spoken. People like to shout "dem Jews" right now, and then they'll say, but is Hamas really wrong? Yes, Hamas is really wrong. I can dislike one group of people and dislike another group of people too. Not that I dislike Jews. I'm just saying it's not an either or proposition, right? So.
Yeah, people get wrapped around this whole Israel thing and anti-Semitism and all that. And anti-Semitism has become really horrible. It's become really horrible by nature of what's been going on, placating ISIS, Hamas, Hezbollah, Iran. Everybody's tried to play the middle road. There's no middle road in that kind of hate game. But what Hamas did in southern Israel in October was absolutely horrendous. And it was inhuman, and it was unacceptable from any perspective, right? Except perhaps from the perspective of the twisted views of Hamas and its followers. So, the Israelis piss me off regularly, always have. I have dear friends there, but they have their own goals, right? They're going to do what's in their interests, their sovereign interests. And they have an internal struggle that's epic. The left in Israel and the right in Israel do not get along, and it's a constant internal battle. But the tragedy of October was that all of the kibbutzim down on that end of the border are pacifists. Those are all the kibbutzim that are socialist in their core, and they all believe in peace, and they all disarmed. They got rid of their security forces. They got rid of their weapons. Nobody had the ability to defend themselves. They lived right across the damn wire. And this is just a reminder that you can believe what you believe, but you have to be responsible for your own safety. And this goes right to why I spend time talking to Joe. He reminds me of the responsibility on a daily basis. And, I'm sorry for my Israeli friends who lost family, but a lot of them did. And these are the people who, after the 87 war, after Lebanon, after the government lied to them about certain things, they all became radically anti-war. Now they're back, and they're bitter, but they're still peaceniks, right? But they can't really be peaceniks. They're peaceniks with the caveat of, my God, that was the most horrendous thing I've seen since I was in Lebanon. We got to go back and fix this. And so Netanyahu has had a long run, much longer than he would have if that hadn't happened. But that takes us back into conspiracy theories, and I don't want to visit that because it was just horrendous.
Well, a lot of the conspiracy theories are just silly and unbounded fact. You and I are capable, because we're adults, of separating dem Jews from the Israeli government. They're not necessarily the same thing, right?
So
a lot
true.
of guys refuse to. But one of the biggest conspiracy theories is that Israel allowed it to happen. Okay, let's just pretend they did. Hamas still planned and carried out absolutely barbaric and anti-civilization acts, just as Derna said. Hey, they still did it, even if Israel knew it was coming and didn't do anything about it. Some could say the same thing about the United States on September 11th. We knew that there was a flight school where a guy said, hey, I don't need to learn how to land. We knew that, right? And
you can build a conspiracy anywhere, man.
Yeah, absolutely. But the fact is, Hamas still planned and executed the attack. They still killed women and children en masse, and they still avoided engaging military targets in favor of just killing and torturing people. That's really them, right? I mean, I can't help that.
It is akin to Pol Pot. That's the level of depravity that occurred on that day.
Which kind of brings us full circle to another topic. You're going to have to think about these things with Azov once that war is over. Those people are going to not have a home, and they're incredibly violent people, and they've got things they still want to do. So they're going to have to. They're going to be somewhere.
That piece is going to be hard.
Yeah. So, in response to a mass number of people protesting against immigration, thank God CNN arrived on the scene to tell us what we should think. Clashes as thousands rally against immigration in Australia in protest the government has linked to neo Nazis. I want to point out something about this photo right here that's at the top of this story. Uh, you notice one guy's fighting, and that guy doesn't have a mask on, but the guy he's fighting is wearing a mask and has his eyes covered and all of that. Why do you suppose that is? Because he's probably a leftist plant and an agitator sent there to cause these problems.
I'm going to guess he's also really unattractive, but that's just historical precedent.
He's no Joe Dolio. This is true. This is true. I mean, the Australians are descendants of the Brits, right? So,
well, be nice, Joe.
What's funny is they claim that how this is anti-immigrant and neo-Nazi, and there's a Japanese guy there in the video. So,
yeah, there isn't a person in Melbourne who isn't an immigrant, child of an immigrant, or child of children of immigrants. So it is a melting pot city. I think the problem now is the socialists have decided they want to rock the boat, and they're squeezing people. And it's this old adage of individual liberty versus civility and control. And under the old Commonwealth law, boy, they've got some real powers when it comes to this maintaining order. And it's swung a little too far. Kind of like our Patriot Act was supposed to be a temporary activity. And now we're looking at a surveillance state of massive proportions that nobody seems to want to give up. That's what you're looking at across these countries as well. We're guilty of it, sadly.
Yeah, and I think that the risk here is allowing the media to kind of help the state by declaring anyone who dissents as some sort of an other than or less than person, right? You are a neo-Nazi, right-wing extremist. That justifies all kinds of actions to be taken against you, right?
You know, when I was in Austria last, about a year ago, and I was meeting with a very old friend who's kind of turned on, let's say, in that part of the world. And we were discussing the elections, and they had elected a conservative government, and the parliament was unwilling to seat the conservative government. So it was being ignored that the country actually chose conservative leaders. And what they were saying is, oh no, they have, quote, ties to Nazis. And, you know, my thought is everybody in Austria and Germany at some point was tied to a Nazi. I mean, they had Nazi leadership. They probably went to Nazi schools. You know, there isn't a way around history, but this stigmatization of people for purposes of political outcome has just gotten absurd. And so, I mean, I'm getting very tired of our president being called a Nazi because he's not. I'm getting really, really tired of every socialist being called a Marxist because they're not. Among socialists, there are Marxists, and we got a hell of a lot of them in New York and Chicago. But not everybody who believes in socialism is dangerous. They're just socialists. And in our country, you're free to be crazy. I think they're out of their minds. And I tell them that often, right? Which doesn't make me very popular in those circles. But at the end of the day, most of them are not dangerous. It's the ones who are dangerous that you have to identify, point your finger at, and go, wow, that's crazy. You're calling for violence, buddy. And they're like, oh, no, I'm not. You know, this is the rhetoric of the party. It's like, well, yeah, it is the rhetoric of the party in my experience. You just answered my question. It's out of line. Now, what I'm seeing with things like the AFD and in Australia, just the automatic knee jerk of the state-run media calling them Nazis, that's got to stop. Because it opens the door to actions by leftist movements that begin violence. And as Joe said, the guy with the mask who started the fight, probably not a conservative. But right. Hey, you know, that's 40 or 50 years of experience speaking. It isn't fact. It's just a pattern that we've seen over our lives. It's usually the guy with the mask who comes flying in from the wing and takes the guy down and then disappears into the police crowd. that's usually an outside agitator.
Well, and that's the entire point of the neo-Nazi thing. If a guy disagrees with me, I'm not exactly justified in being violent against him. But if he's a Nazi, literally the most evil people in the world, then he is indeed someone I can use violence against. And there's even a war of words amongst the media here, because the headline says clashes as thousands rally against immigration, but their own website, March for Australia, says mass migration has torn at the bonds that held our community together. That the rallies aim to do what the mainstream media politicians never have the courage to do: demand an end to mass immigration. So when you actually look at what they're saying, they're against mass immigration. That's not anti-immigration. It's anti-mass immigration, right? Where you're importing people wholesale from communities that don't agree with the basic social mores and social contract that already existed, right? They're trying to change the entire makeup of the area. That's a different thing than just migration.
Yeah, you listen to Barack Obama's words, right, about changing the country. This is not a outcome that wasn't coordinated. Everybody did this consciously. So, the World Economic Forum thinkers, they wanted this kind of homogenization of societies and individual liberties. Countries where the concept of individual liberties exists is a threat to that. So the United States is a threat to that whole model of let's just get everybody in the same game, make them dependent on government. It's the way most of the world sees the future, right? And that's why I'm really concerned about the SCO recoordinating and India getting on board, because India is the largest democracy in the world. And if they swing that way, we have a serious problem. But when you watch the United States and you watch the resistance to illegal migration, all of these countries where we're seeing this kind of Northern European sentiment being challenged, so England, Australia, New Zealand, parts of continental Europe, the United States, Canada, you have a very interesting problem, which is housing prices are through the roof, inflation is through the roof, social services are strained, healthcare is strained. You begin to see in the cities now, people are coming out and saying, well, Section 8 housing, you have to prove you're a citizen. Well, that's always been true. So who's been ignoring the federal laws around subsidized housing across the country? It's been the socialist blue cities that have just decided not to check boxes on forms, and that's become okay. I heard an immigration, this is a quick story, but I heard an immigration lawyer yesterday on television, and she was talking about the recent stay of one of the big cases that the Homeland Security and the border, the ICE is involved in. And her point was, well, it's been this way for the last 30 years. And for the last 20 years, there's never been a case judged this way. And for the last 20 years, we've done it this way and this way and this way. And they're trying to change the way we've been doing it. Absolutely, we are. Absolutely. Because the bias in the last 20 to 30 years has been to take the intent of all immigration law and throw it away, because they wanted unfettered access to the United States for people from around the world. And we've got millions of these people distorting the economy. We can't allow that. Europe's woken up. Everybody's waking up. The UK is beginning to wake up. And you've got to enforce the border. You've got to enforce immigration law. But right now, the legal guild in Washington around the immigration issue is trying to use the courts to create a money bag for themselves for the next 2 decades, which is slow down the deportation, maintain control of the demographics in the major cities, and move everything to the left. And again, that's opinion, but that's what I'm seeing.
Yeah. And that's an excellent point. It's the way we've been doing it for the last 20 years is not a way to run things.
Not at all. But, in the law, it's like precedent.
Yeah. To back up that point, sanctuary cities, it's actually unlawful. That's actually sedition to say we're not going to allow the enforcement of federal law in our city. That's sedition. And we allowed it to happen and didn't take action against the first sanctuary cities. And we should have. I'm not saying that the federal government should be used as a cudgel to beat states into compliance, but sometimes it absolutely is necessary when it's for the good of the people, right? You can't just say no. In my town, we don't allow the federal government to do their job. It doesn't work that way.
Yeah, yeah. It's been interesting watching the cities circle the wagons and try to defend against this. But I have a feeling there's going to be a major come to Jesus in these cities in the next couple months because their funding is so tied to federal largesse. And they spent money like stuck pigs for a decade on this whole program. And I think it's going to backfire on them.
Yep, I think so too.
Now,
But
by the way, everybody, it's not just the Western world that's finding that there's problems in paradise, right? We talked earlier about Indonesia and Southeast Asia. Indonesia now has domestic unrest, and it magically occurred, right? It just magically occurred that there's anti-government sentiment there, made the front page of all the papers across Asia. So there is a subversive movement underway being funded by somebody. I bet you all can guess who that is. And Indonesia was given the Natuna Islands by the Chinese. Chinese said, okay, you can have Natuna. We don't want it. And then the next week, domestic anti-government activities kick off in some major cities that happen to be highly influenced by outside parties. That kind of thing needs to be understood. And then you need to understand that our country and other countries, we're driven by money and what is grass topping, right? It is astroturfing. It is people are paying for this media and agitation in all of these marketplaces. So much of the noise that you're seeing about Mondani in New York is being paid for by people who don't want their faces on papers. And they are the billionaires du jour. I don't hate billionaires, but I don't like people paying for this kind of work in the United States. I think it's unlawful myself. But we're seeing a lot of that now. And you should watch Mondani and then go look at Indonesia and watch that violence kick off the week after China hands them a gift, expecting a perfect quid pro quo, and then shows them that the violence can be turned on like a spigot. We have to remember who we're playing with. And we have to remember how damn lucky we are to be here, right? Ain't perfect, but it's a hell of a lot better than most places.
it is. Hey, Clippers revenge. That's literally what we're talking about. I'm just throwing that out there. So, you mentioned India a minute ago and joining the SCO. Ironically, India has a story. No place in our country. Australia slams campaigns against increasing migration of Indians. To me, I point this out all the time that India is the one place that is still attempting to colonize, right? And you can tell me I'm wrong, but then I will point to the two examples from Michigan, Canton Township and the city of Novi. They have all gone to almost 90% Indian populations in the last 15 to 20 years with our importation of tech workers. And if you go through the Caribbean, you'll find a lot of little Indian enclaves. And off the coast, the eastern coast of Africa, you'll find Indian enclaves. And apparently it's not restricted there. Apparently Australia has the same problem. This is also another Indian media story, NDTV. But the same problem is being pointed out everywhere, that there are Indian migration going into a lot of other places. As you pointed out, India is the largest democracy in the world. They have a lot of people. They don't have a lot of space. So they continue to attempt to export people as a matter of government policy.
Yeah. The concept of labor migration from India, and you're talking skilled migration in most cases to the United States, right? It's only recently we've had truck driver problems, but when you look at the skilled migration that's being subsidized by the tech companies, I got a good story here. A friend of mine, Persian guy, I went to college with. Family was involved in the family of government back then, so he was a member of the Shah's cabinet. Blah blah blah. Is an engineer, a tech guy, lives in the Bay Area, California, and he bought a nice house many years ago. Successful guy, and I was on the phone with him a couple of years ago. I said, "How's it going down there?" And he said, "Oh, it's wonderful. You know, it's really, really good." I said, "How's the neighborhood?" He said, "Oh, you know, house prices up, down, up, down, up, down." He's probably got a $3 million house, let's say. I said, "What's the neighborhood like?" He said, "Oh, you know, most of the guys that I bought and my kids grew up with have left. They've all, you know, disappeared to Texas or some other state." And I said, "So who are your new neighbors?" He said, "Well, they're Indians, of course." And I said, "Well, what do you mean Indians?" It's like, "Oh, well, a couple are Punjabis, a couple are this, a couple of guys went to IIT. They're all really accomplished people who've made lots of money in the tech companies, but they came over as H-1Bs. They were recruited in for technical skills, and they are very adept, very hardworking." And I said, "How's that going for you?" He said, "It's really good." It said, "It's just really hard to find a steak. You know, it's hard. Things have changed in the neighborhood. It's not terrible. It's just different." And this is a Persian kid, right? That came over to university, right, in 1978 or 79. And now he's surrounded by young Indian families, and he's the older guy on the block, and they're really nice to him and they socialize, but it's different, right? In his case, he's got a very high level, highly educated group, but they came over as part of this programmed labor movement, which is you can get an Indian technical engineer for half of what you could get an American engineer for, so they'd hire an Indian engineer. Now the Indians are running most of the companies. Most of the tech companies and tech shops have very strong Indian or South Asian control in them. And so it's a self-fulfilling prophecy. And it's not an observation of positive, negative at this point, because many of them are American citizens that are part of our society. But they culturally can favor India. And they have been. And there have been some turnovers, and there's been some illegal activity at the large technical companies where there are payoffs associated with these recruiting models.
I was just going to say that.
Yeah, it happens,
Walmart
right?
just got caught in this scam. Walmart.
Yeah, Bentonville got hurt badly by a single contractor.
A single contractor who is exactly what you thought he was, and everyone who works in that department is exactly who you think they are, and they all come from the same place, and that continues. They self-segregate in that area as far as employment, but they also do it in housing. And Patrick raises this point. Milford is a small town outside of Novi. All new upper middle class and upper class housing developments going up are full of Indians also. In Metro Detroit, there's a big problem. I only know this because I've got experience there, but there's a lot of developments made by the Singh Development Company. And you can't discriminate in housing. However, all of the loans for housing in there only go to Indian people, and only Indian people live there. Now, I know that people other than Indians have tried to move into those neighborhoods, but for whatever reason, their loan doesn't go through and other people's loans do. And it creates enclaves and it becomes self-segregating. And that's one of those problems. It's folks bringing that caste system and that preference system from their home nation, whether it's India or wherever, and implementing it here in the U.S. That's not how we are supposed to operate here, right?
But that's not redlining, is it, Joe?
No, it's only redlining when one group does it. Any other group can do it.
Yeah, exactly.
This is the exact definition of redlining. It's 100%. Yeah. But they never apply laws to this group.
Yeah, this is red dotting. It's different. What ends up happening? Sorry. So what ends up happening in these situations is you end up with isolated subcommunities, and that's what my Persian friend was talking about. I spoke to a Japanese woman who's my age, who grew up in the town next to where my wife grew up in California, and she had moved up here to Montana, and she was talking about how wonderful Montana was, and we had a conversation sitting around having a beer, and this woman is probably more American than I am, right? And she's a 66-year-old Japanese American, I think third generation or fourth generation immigrant. And I said, "Oh, you're from that town in Southern California?" She goes, "Yeah." I said, "How is that?" She said, "It's horrible." I said, "Why?" She said, "It's become a Chinese city." She said, "You can't get anything done. It is 100% focused on the needs of my Chinese neighbors, and none of them want to socialize with anybody but the Chinese." Yeah. And she said it's really destroyed the fabric of the town she grew up in, where her father ran a gardening business, right? And that's an American story. It isn't a story about race alone. It's a story about change and radical change, right? From a small American town in Southern California to a Chinese enclave where homes now are so expensive that no Americans can actually break in. And as you said, all the realtors are selling to Chinese, all the builders are working for Chinese. It's become a Chinese town stationed in Southern California. And when I use the word Chinese, it's not just an ethnic observation. It is PRC Chinese control these towns. It is the new wave of I would say post 2001 migration and dominance. And if you read the news about LA, you read the news about the mayor of LA and her ties into the community of finance, the banks that are run by Hong Kong / PRC nationals that are very powerful in these communities. This is a coordinated, planned economic move. It isn't an uncontrolled thing. And it doesn't mean that all these people are terrible people. It just means it's been very disruptive to the fabric of the societies in these various towns. And a lot of people have left California because of it. And this rolls out across towns in Orange County as well. It's not just LA County. So it was interesting to hear a Japanese American woman explain to me why she was uncomfortable in her town. And sad.
As pointed out in unrestricted warfare, it's a lot cheaper way to invade a country, right? If I send in immigrants that live off the economy, they then fund their own invasion because that money goes back to the home country. It's less costly. You don't need as many newly trained war fighters to do it, and you do it slowly, and it ends up benefiting your economy while destroying the other nation's economy.
So another piece of news in this whole arena that popped up is the 600,000 Chinese students that are coming into the United States. Again, 600,000 PRC students. None of these kids can come here without party affiliation or party acquiescence or support, yet they're coming. That's a really bad idea. And I know it's catastrophic for the universities because these people pay top dollar to the universities. They come in, they end up staying here, but there is no mechanism by which we can allow that to occur with any modicum of national security interest being paid to it. So
You've got to be wrong.
we got to get smart. Smart.
I've had it explained to me many, many times that Daddy Trump can do no wrong. So you must be wrong here on this.
Yeah. There's an interesting quid pro quo behind this program, and it has to do with the survival of the universities. I think every major university relies on these PRC students coming in, and there was a program that it was favorable to get party members' children to come here and be educated because they would understand us and they would work more closely with us and they would be available to us so that we could go have conversations with them. I think that benefit is gone now. And if anybody out there has other ideas, I'd love to hear them. But I think the benefit of placating party members' children because they will become our friends, I think we've been proven that doesn't work.
Yeah, and I'm gonna say something pretty unpopular here, and I'll probably get castigated for it. But everyone who's really into the marijuana legalization push, you need to look further into that, because guess who's running the giant commercial farms and not to your benefit? Right?
The same people running money laundering out of Central to South America.
Right, and it also turns out that the vast majority of these large commercial grows are run by the Chinese.
They're run by triads.
Yeah,
and same people, different face.
Yeah, they're not doing it for your benefit. They're doing it because they know what it's going to do to American society, and they might as well make some money off of it while they destroy us from the inside.
Yeah, I saw an interesting article over the weekend about the vape oils all coming from China, and some of the compounds that are being mixed into the vape oils. It's an immense industry, and for China, it's a global industry. But they control those little capsules you put in your vape machine. I wouldn't touch that stuff with a 10-foot pole. I mean, again, it's not my style to do that kind of thing, but not knowing what's in those things, we're trying to get food dye out of our food. I can't imagine breathing in oils from China that are chemically altered for various effects. That just sounds really silly to me. And supposedly there are no controls on that.
Crazy stuff. Crazy stuff. Well, I think that brings us to the end of everything that I have had for today, unless there's something else you think everyone needs to hear.
You talking to Hunch?
I'm talking to you.
You know, yeah, I think we've done a pretty good skip around the planet. I just ask that everybody try to be nice in the next few weeks, because I think there's going to be a lot of things flying around. And I think we're going to have an interesting Supreme Court docket coming up here. Washington's waking up tomorrow after its French style August. Yeah, what did I do? You didn't do anything. I just don't know if Rick's watching. So I knew you were. So I figured I'd reach out to you this time. I think it's just going to be a busy couple weeks in DC. And I think that there are going to be some really unpopular court cases that occur. But, it's going to be fast and furious on the Hill. And I hope the Supreme Court is taking their Geritol, because they're going to need it. And I hope somebody has brought a biologist for Katanji to be able to make decisions. The Hill. I wouldn't want to be on the Hill this week. But the disinformation coming out of DC, everybody's saying it's terrible. It's August in DC. It is terrible. But it has nothing to do with the fact that crime has stopped. Everybody's trying to pretend crime hasn't stopped. Crime has stopped. All it needs is good policing. The police there are good. The sad thing is they need to take the park police and teach them how to do high-speed pursuits again, because they've had a really bad week. I think they've had, out of the 8 pursuits, I think there were 5 accidents. I think there's some retraining that needs to go into that group, but there you go. That's kind of my highlight of the week. Make sure that they don't have more crashes.
Departments got away from any sort of pursuits for a long time. So when you start actually enforcing the law again, you're like, oh wait, I have to know how to do this. So that's a good point. The other thing is, I thought that we had already ruled earlier this year that a single district court judge can no longer enjoin the entire United States government. And yet we had it happen again yesterday.
Yeah, I think the judiciary doesn't care. I think a lot of these people who've come in under Biden and Obama really, really don't care about the system. What they care about is a maintenance of the system they want. And so they'll continue to drop these road apples, and they'll get overturned in either the appellate or at the Supreme Court. The problem is they're going to try to gum the Supreme Court up. So, that immigration discussion that I talked about, where the immigration lawyer was saying we have to slow everything down. It should take 5 or 10 years to fix these. We don't have enough judges. we don't have enough lawyers. They want to gum the system up. And I think one of the things Trump needs to do is just bulldoze that absurdity. And you do that by going to the Supreme Court and running it aggressively. So the DOJ is going to be under a huge amount of pressure. And I wish them all luck at keeping this flowing, because the reorganization of government is very important. Cleaning out the dead wood is important. Shutting down the stupid ass departments is important. But this is a once in a generation chance to stop what Obama put into action. And that's why he's out there on the front page of every magazine now and newspaper. It's because he knows his legacy of radically changing the United States is at risk. And that actually gives me a warm feeling.
Yeah. And I'll point out that this judge who issued the most recent immigration related ruling, her first name is Sparkle, which should be automatically disqualifying from being a federal district court judge.
And she's from Trinidad and Tobago. So she is probably a little left to center. Give her some credit. I don't know her, but my guess is this is a structured choice of venue, and she'll get overturned.
Hey, give her lots of credit, because she's from Trinidad and Tobago and named Sparkle and doesn't work in a strip club. Good for
Oh,
her.
bummer.
Good on her. Uh, Durna, our cat was also named Sparkle when I was growing up. Exactly my point. All right, that is all I have for you all. I want to thank you, Jim, for joining me and helping me muddle through all of this. Let's hope Scott and Washer can make it back for Wednesday. And in honor of Scott, I will say, everyone, stay safe. And that is the end.